Hello, and welcome to another podcast episode of Indigenous Roots and Hoots, produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation. Indigenous Roots and Hoots is about Indigenous people and culture, past and present, success stories and inspiring stories about Indigenous people and what they are doing today. Whether it's arts, music, sports, business, education, and so on, Indigenous people are affecting positive change in their communities throughout Canada. Our aim is to create a better awareness about Indigenous peoples to help bridge the gap of understanding for the reconciliation process in Canada to grow. Today's guest is Heidi Metcalfe. Heidi is a proud urban Inuk with family roots in Nunatsiavut, Labrador. She is a mom and the first Ottawa Inuit-based foster parent, cultural ambassador, throat singer, and Inuit Games demonstrator. Heidi is one of the founders of the Ottawa Inuit Children's Centre, now called Inuuqatigiit Centre, which empowers Inuit families in Ottawa through culture-based programming and services. Heidi is a role model not only in her local community, but across Canada. In 2010, Heidi was recognized as a National Aboriginal Role Model. This recognition enabled her to travel across the country to motivate and inspire Indigenous youth. Heidi enjoys providing interactive presentations to all walks of life about Inuit culture, including throat singing, history, current events, drumming, and Inuit Games. She is one half of the cultural performing duo Inuuqatigiit Sun's Drum, along with her friend and performing partner Linda Brown. Inuuqatigiit has traveled extensively nationally and internationally, demonstrating and performing. Heidi also volunteers with several boards and initiatives, including the Ottawa Police Services Community Equity Council, co-chair of the Indigenous Subcommittee, and the Ontario Aboriginal Housing Support Services Proposal Review Committee. Heidi is motivated to changing the way of doing things to ensure better outcomes for all, and we are honored to have her with us today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this podcast episode of Roots and Hoots, produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation. I'm your host, Gordon Spence, and my guest today is Heidi Metcalfe. Hello, Heidi. How are you today?
Not bad, Gordon. How are you?
We're doing well, and I'm very happy that you agreed to join us on this podcast. And maybe we can begin by, tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, your cultural identity, that sort of stuff. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, wow. It's always a tough one to. My name is Heidi Metcalfe. I am a lifelong urban Inuk. I am the youngest of 7, born and raised in Ottawa, and been. My dad is Inuk. My mom is Dutch, so I feel like I've walked in both worlds or 2 worlds most of my life, and a super proud member of the Ottawa Inuit, or the Ottawa community, Ottawa Inuit community, volunteering my time there, working within the community, and supporting Inuit as much as I possibly can.
Right on. You're one of the founders of the Inuuqatigiit Centre for Inuit Children and their families.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about the center and what it does.
So Inuuqatigiit has been around for a number of years now. I feel like it is my baby a little bit, and now it's kind of grown and, flown the nest and moved on and doing its own thing, which is fantastic. We started it was a group of parents, and all of our children were in the Inuit Head Start program, and we felt like there was more that could be done for children and their families at that time in Ottawa. So we formed the Ottawa Inuit Children's Centre, which later changed its name to Inuuqatigiit. And it has grown, and it is a major staple for Ottawa Inuits. It's got a strength-based model, children first type of philosophy, and knowing that children can succeed if their families are succeeding, and so the philosophy of meeting families where they're at and going from there, individual as well as group, so children, youth, families, everybody all together. So they've got a Head Start program, daycare program, education hubs. So elementary and high school Inuit students can choose to learn within their culture, following the same curriculum as everyone else. After school programs, women's groups, men's groups, just all kinds of stuff, activities and supports for Inuit in Ottawa, which is it was so needed when I was a child, and it's still needed today. And it's successful. It's amazing. It's celebrating culture and changing the way people do things for better outcomes. So yeah, I'm proud of the work that I did many years ago, starting up the Ottawa Inuit Children's Centre with
Right.
along with other parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe my daughter is the president of the center. Yeah, I thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah. We
She's
like having her as the president of the board of directors. She's
yeah,
amazing.
that's great to hear. Yeah, I know she's doing really well. One of the things I wanted to ask you, I'm a little bit surprised, pleasantly surprised to hear that the Inuit Children's Center is more inclusive of not just children, but the whole family as a whole and older children as well. Is that, did I hear you correctly?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Children are only children for so long, and then they become youth, and youth have their own, wants and needs and interests, and youth are only youth for so long, right? And then they become adults and, working adults, parents. So the Ottawa Inuuqatigiit surrounds the entire family for sure.
Yeah. And I think one of the programs you had going on there with the young people, with the young children, is the Inuktitut language program. Is that still going on?
I'm not 100% sure because COVID interrupted so many different things. But I do know that they have resources to help people learn Inuktitut for sure. And one of the programs that I forgot to mention, it's one that my brother has worked in many years. So I better mention it if I want to enjoy Christmas with my family.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
he does the Bridging the Gap program, which is working with the school system and working with Inuit children and youth in the schools, doing presentations, teaching about Inuit culture, improving the curriculum, all kinds of stuff like that, which is, the school system has really changed since I went to elementary school, and it's changing for the better. And we do know, with the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, we do know that there's more work to be done within the education system. And one of my brothers at the Inuuqatigiit Centre with this program is doing that work.
Yeah. The reason why I mentioned the language thing is because the Legacy Hope Foundation is working on a language project. I kind of remember they were teaching Inuktitut at the Inuit Children's Center at one point, and I was just wondering how that was going because indigenous languages become such an important issue across Canada with First Nations. Not so much Inuit because their language is pretty strong. The Métis also, but the Métis language is also in danger of people not being able to speak it, kind of slowly disappearing. Like many indigenous languages, First Nations languages are kind of, in danger of disappearing. So there's been a big push for language reclamation across Canada and culture as well. So I was kind of interested to see how that was coming along. But like you said, COVID kind of interrupted a lot of the stuff that's being taught in school. But I guess the Inuit Children's Center is back open again now. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. They
Yeah.
stayed open throughout COVID, but they had to pivot, I suppose, and do a lot of the work that they normally do at home. So, the community didn't have the celebrations that we normally have, like the big Christmas party and Inuit Day in February and graduation days and stuff like that. And a lot of the group activities had to be put on hold, but the center stayed open and worked through and still supported families throughout the pandemic.
I can imagine like children, they need to interact with each other, and it must have been frustrating for children, to not be able to see other children. And I know my grandchildren are feeling the same way, even though they were learning online, it's just not the same,
No, it's
when you
yeah.
when you when you're interacting with other kids, your friends and that sort of thing.
Well, and Inuit are such experiential learners too, right? So sitting in front of a computer screen for a lot of children is difficult, but I found it especially difficult for Inuit children who are used to being active and moving around and doing the experiential learning.
Right. Especially with Dion and his games, keeping the kids active.
Yes.
Is the Christmas party still on this year? Is it on again?
As far as I know, it's going to happen.
Okay, that's great.
It is
We'll be
great.
there. Yeah. You are also part of a group called Signi Up Kilauta. Did I say that right?
Sikiniup Klauta.
Yeah. Okay. Sun's drum. Sun's drum is what it means, right?
Yes.
How did this come about? And tell us a little bit about it.
Sikiniup Kilauta has been around longer than I've been part of the group. It started out with two sisters and two of their friends wanting to learn how to throat sing, wanting to learn the traditional ayaya songs, and wanting to learn how to drum. And so they did it. They got some funding. They ran some practices. They spoke to other throat singers and elders and learned what they could. And eventually, three out of the four members ended up moving back to Inuit Ninangat. And so the one member that was still Ottawa based, she's my best friend. Her name's Linda Brown. She looked at me. We were working together at Inuqatigiit Inuit Women of Canada at the time. And she looked at me and she said, "You're going to learn how to throat sing. I'm going to teach you." It's like, okay, let's do it. All right, let's do this. And so she took me under her wing. She taught me throat singing, and ever since then, it's been the two of us, and we have been very fortunate to travel to many wonderful places, work collaboratively with many wonderful artists. When we first started throat singing, we can count on the number of throat singers on one hand. There was very, very few throat singing. It was considered very exotic, very odd, right? But even though it's part of the Inuit culture, it wasn't odd or exotic for Inuit, but for the audiences. And now there are so many throat singers. It is absolutely amazing to see the reclamation that happened with throat singing. And Linda and I have had the privilege to teach throat singing to many different people from all around. And so every time we travel and we meet another throat singer, we exchange songs and practice and laugh. And so yeah, that's Sun's drum. That's Siknik Klauta. Very fortunate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a unique form of expression, singing. I find that when people first hear to throat singing they're kind of shocked, surprised that it's a different form of song.
Yeah.
It's a different form of expression, singing. It's not your everyday singing kind of thing. So it's quite
and the fact that we don't sing at the same time, right? Like that we're singing in a round, but in a very, very quick round. Yeah. I pride myself, Gordon, on teaching anybody how to throat singing in under a minute. Are you up for it?
Okay.
All right. I want you to say humma, humma, humma.
Okay, hang on a minute. Humma, humma, humma. Okay,
Yeah.
humma.
Now I want you to say humma, 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 but use your monster voice.
Okay.
Humma, humma, humma.
Oh, okay. I got it. Humba, 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 humba.
Fantastic, but you're not quite throat singing yet.
Okay.
And Gordon, I do have to say that I teach people how to throat sing not so they can take space away from Inuit and submit for an Indigenous Music Award. Please,
Right.
I hope none
Don't
of your
do that.
listeners do that. No.
No.
But I do teach it so people get an appreciation of what throat singers are doing.
Yes.
So where you're making the right sounds for a basic competition song, but what we're actually doing with throat singing is when you say hum, the other throat singer would actually be saying ma. All right. So like we're not doing the same sounds at the same time.
Okay.
And the first one to laugh loses the game because throat singing is a game.
Okay.
So why don't you start and I'll jump in.
Okay. Humba, humba,
Hum,
humba,
hum,
humba,
hum,
humba,
hum,
humba,
hum,
humba,
hum,
humba,
hum.
humba. My throat is getting scratchy. You gotta have water.
That's
Not
part of
yet to doing that for
that's
yeah,
part of the challenge. Yeah, I
yeah,
recommend water,
yeah,
hot tea with a little bit of honey in it, and fisherman's friends.
yeah. Okay, I got those. Yeah, for sure. That's quite awesome, Heidi. Now I'm gonna practice with Martha.
Yes, one of my greatest joys is throat singing with Martha.
Yeah, she's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have traveled across Canada inspiring and teaching young people about your Inuit culture. What do you say to young people you meet, when you're doing your presentations, your throat singing and the history and drumming and games? Is there a message there somewhere, or is this more of an educational thing?
You know, I is there a message? Normally, like I tailor my presentations and performances to the audience, to what they want to learn. So I always find doing presentations and performances for the youth, especially because they're not afraid of asking questions, right? And that is fantastic because that tells me what they want to learn. One of my greatest pet peeves is when people say youth are the future, or, you know, it's like, no, youth are right now,
Right.
right? They're not the future. They are right now. And, we've done a pretty poor job, my generation, of taking care of this earth for the youth and the children. And, we're
Well,
making a lot of changes. We're doing a lot of good things, but we do need to forward as a society. I do think we need to be more forward thinking of whatever our decisions and actions now, what kind of impact they have for generations down the line. But my goal always, Gordon, is to create allies. I find with education, communication, understanding, then we get allies. And there's only 65,000 Inuit in Canada. There's more university students in Ottawa than there are Inuit in all of Canada. And we're strong. We're resilient. I'm looking forward to a time where we don't have to be resilient, but we've negotiated 4 distinct land claim agreements that make up 35% of Canada's land mass, right? There's a lot for Inuit to be proud of, but we do need allies. And so my goal is to always create allies.
yeah. At one time when I was working for Inuit in the 90s, I believe the number was around 25,000 Inuit across Canada. So the population has grown substantially. And
Substantially.
yeah, and with the First Nations, I guess you could say Indigenous people in general in Canada have the fastest growing population in Canada. So
Yeah.
that's really good to hear,
It is
for
it is good
people.
to hear.
Yeah,
I agree. I think one of the reasons for the population explosion is that it's safer now for Indigenous people to identify as Indigenous. We know in Canada that hasn't always been the case. And, I have to props and shout outs to all the folks that came before you and I, Gordon, to make sure that change for our generation and for the generations to come, right? So it's safer now for people to self identify as Indigenous. We're not 100% there yet, but it is definitely safer. So that's one of the small reasons for the population explosion. The other one is, like, we tend to have big families.
right. Yeah, yeah. And there seems to be more mobility now. People are like moving about and going places and, doing different things and, just more interaction, I guess. I don't know. There could be a number of reasons. Like you and I don't think we could pinpoint the exact reasons for it, but there's probably a combination of things that contribute to the population growth, and it
Hmm.
and that's a good thing. So you travel across Canada, you've met tons of people, and you've done demonstrations, presentations. You recently were recognized in 2010 as a national Aboriginal role model. How has this impacted your life?
I love how you say recently there, because 2010 seems so long ago, doesn't it?
I know. Well, recent, if you're my age, that's not too long ago.
I suppose. Yeah, when people say 20 years ago, I think 1980, but 20 years ago was 2002.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't think about that.
I
That
mean,
actually, that long. The Nunavut land claim was just recently. I still think of it as recently. It was 1999, right?
yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'll keep you up late at night with these thoughts.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, the National Aboriginal Role Model Program was a wonderful program. It was put together by the National Aboriginal Health Organization, which is no longer around, unfortunately. And that was the beginning of, well, maybe not the beginning, but um, I received a lot of confidence from that, a lot of support, a lot of people who helped, and acknowledging that the people that surrounded me then and now, I'm nothing without the people that help. Yeah, the National Aboriginal Role Model Program. What a program! It was so amazing. So yeah, I got to go to all kinds of different places. Like I went to the Niskapi Nation of Kawawa and spoke with the community there. And I remember going up to Red Lake as well and speaking to the community there. And just it was an amazing program, and there was so many amazing people involved, and it was such an honor to be nominated and chosen. So, but it does feel like a few years ago now, Gordon.
Yep. There were actually was one prior to that. I don't know if the same one around the late 80s, say about 85 in that time frame. I could be the same one. It could be another different one. It was the Indigenous Aboriginal role models from across Canada. There was a number of them. Joy Keeper was one, and the other one I can't remember. They had posters, right?
Yeah.
And there's a guy who's a doctor now who was in BC. But I don't know. Maybe it's the same program. But I thought it was really good because they had posters, and they distributed these posters with a picture of the person and what they did. So and went across Canada, and I think they were quite inspiring for young people to see. Man, this person is doing this. Maybe I could do something like that. So absolutely, the National Aboriginal Role Model Program, was definitely successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Posters and trading cards. That was interesting.
The trading cards I didn't know about. Tell me about
Yeah.
the trading cards.
Well, it was the same image that was on the posters, but it would be on a little trading card, and everybody who is appointed, or I forget the name of it, but was a National Aboriginal role model, also got a trading card that you could hand out in
Yeah.
communities and such.
Okay, like your calling card, eh? Yeah.
Yeah.
How many were there when you were there? How many role models?
In 2010, there was 12 of us.
12.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you name a few?
I could, but you put me on the spot. Oh my goodness. I'd have to-
No, it's okay. No, no, it's okay. Never mind. Okay, let's we got a couple more questions for you here. You have also volunteered on many boards and committees over the years. Is there one that stands out for you? I know probably the Signi Up Kilauta or the Inuuqatigiit Inuit Children's Center is probably special to you.
You
Are there
know,
any others?
I volunteer on these places. I- I'll tell you why I volunteer in these places before I tell you which ones. Like they're all special, right? But when I and you knew my dad, so you would understand this conversation a little bit. But when I got approved for post-secondary education funding, my college was paid for. My dad sat me down, and he was a little pissed off, and I didn't understand why he was upset that his daughter was getting funding for college, right? Like it just so I listened, and I was like, what's going on, right? And my dad, he's like, I was the one that went through forced relocation, residential school, tuberculosis treatment. It was my family, my brothers, my sisters, my mom, my dad, people my generation were the ones that went through all of this pain and heartache. And he said, you've led a pretty good life, and now your college is being paid for. Don't you dare take it for granted, and don't you dare become entitled. And I was like, okay, Dad. Like, yeah, 100%. You're right. Right. Like, he went through all of that pain and heartache, and everybody
Yeah.
he knew went through that pain and heartache, and, suicides and alcoholism and all kinds of stuff, and fought through that. And he said, yeah, don't become entitled.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you're right.
Don't feel entitled. Yeah.
And don't take it for granted.
Right.
So, taking my dad's words, and what can little old Heidi do? Well, Heidi can volunteer her time. So yeah, it started off with, oh my goodness, it started off with Inuit nonprofit housing. I started there in 2002, sat on their board of directors, right? Because
I was on that board too at the time.
yeah, I believe that. But yeah, if you don't have a house, if you don't have a home, then how can you even begin to do anything else, right? Like, couch surfing is no way to live, and living in the shelter system, especially with kids, oh my goodness, it's one of the hardest things that so many in our communities do. So yeah, volunteering my time on Inuit nonprofit housing, and then working with other parents on the Inuuqatigiit, or Ottawa Inuit Children's Centre, and continuing on with the housing theme, volunteering with the Ontario Aboriginal Housing Support Services on their proposal review committee. And that one doesn't get a lot of comments or a lot of reviews or a lot of, and as it's an amazing organization that is making change in so many people's lives day in and day out, and just working away and doing it. And I am honored to be on the proposal review committee. So through that proposal review committee, millions have gone into Indigenous housing in Ontario. And that could be rent geared to income housing. It could be this building transitional housing. It could be renovating housing that already exists but isn't livable, but now it is. Just, it's an absolutely amazing committee to be a part of. So being a foster parent, that has been a great honor as well. Like, to be able to be welcomed into a child's heart and be able to help that family, the children and the biological parents, in the time of their lives when they're experiencing heartache and crisis, right? And being able to connect with the parents, and as much as we possibly can, reunite the family. It's hard. It's not always easy, but it is most definitely worth it. So yeah, I don't know, Gordon. Like, that's
I mean, the whole foster thing, raising children, that are not yours, the whole foster care program, that's a whole kettle of fish there that we could spend hours talking about. And I'm amazed that you were able to do that. And it's like, I was just looking at a little bit about your biography here, and I count at least 6 organizations that you were a member of, a committee member of, or a board member of. And that to me says it all about, your character and the absolute, for sure you are a national Aboriginal role model, and not just a youth, but a person. So I'm quite amazed and impressed by that. I mean, to be on that many committees and boards and still function as a foster parent, and do all the great things that you do. So it's you're quite an amazing person. I want to just ask you one more question that's been floating around across Canada over the last year or so, maybe a couple of years now. It's about, truth and reconciliation, and talking about the buzzword has been reconciliation, and how we can make Canada a better country for everybody to live in. And I ask all my guests this: how do you feel? What are your feelings on reconciliation?
Oh my goodness, Gordon, like, we could chat for hours on so many different things, can't we? You know, I admire the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and all the work that they did in advancing this narrative in Canada. we can't have the reconciliation without the truth. So the work that the Legacy of Hope Foundation is doing about the truth and the residential school system. I used to joke, it's not really a joke, it's sort of true, but I say it as a joke, that the general public in Canada can only handle one crisis at a time, or one negative topic at a time. And for the longest time, it's been the residential school system and the history in Canada with the residential school system. And the changes that I have seen as a society in this country just in the past 10 years alone has been fantastic. When Stephen Harper did the apology in 2008, I remember being very skeptical. I did get invited to go to Parliament Hill and I refused, partly because he left the Labrador residential schools out of the apology, and that's where my family is from. And I remember like, okay, yeah, we'll see where this goes. Like, of course, having the hope and the optimism, but yeah, we'll see where this goes. And because of the work of so many people, so many people, a lot has been done. And I know that a lot more needs to be done, but the truth and reconciliation work has opened the doors for other conversations, including like the 60 scoop and the child welfare system and the education system and the policing system and all of these systems that have done harm to Indigenous people in this country. So much admiration and gratitude for all of the work that has been done. And continue. I forget what the question is by now, but well, truth first, reconciliation after, and we'll get there. It's going to take time, but yeah, we will get there.
Well, it's like, to me, it's people like you that make a difference in terms of trying to reconcile this country, to be a better country and to understand each other, and all the great work that you do and other people that do similar things, like Teresa Edwards, our executive director. She also gets involved in a lot of committees and boards trying to educate people about Indigenous people and history. So I think you're quite an amazing person, an inspiring role model, a leader, for sure, an ambitious young person. I won't call you a youth. You're not a youth anymore.
Not a youth anymore. Haven't been for a while.
I keep wanting to think of you as a young person, but I guess you're an adult now, and you have children, and and you're doing great things. I'm just amazed at talking to you and all the things that you've done. And you really have a good future, a bright future ahead of you. So just keep doing what you're doing, and you're a real inspiration to everybody. And I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today, Legacy Hope Foundation. On behalf of them, the Legacy Hope Foundation, who I am a part of, we want to thank you for taking the time to do this with us today. Nakamik, thank you, Mercy.
Nakamik, Gordon, I appreciate the conversation.
Roots and Hoots is a podcast project produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation. Music is provided by David Finkel. For For more episodes like this and to learn more about the work we are doing, please visit www.legacyofhope.ca to learn more.